Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's time to review the Christian Homestead YouTube channel. The Christian Homestead channel follows LDS church news, signs of the times, and discusses all things related to the second coming. Just check out these thumbnails and you'll see what this channel is all about. Looking for signs of when Jesus will return again. The prophet will know when it will happen. The church at large will not know. The second coming, oh, it has already begun? Or Brigham Young, they will not know that it is the Savior who is ruling. Notice that this channel has almost 40,000 subscribers. Now it's time to meet Jared, who runs the Christian Homestead channel. Whoa, I should have given you a trigger warning about that. I do apologize. Let's hear what Jared has to say.
You guys, listen.
Okay.
Of course it's going to be soon.
Really?
Of course it is.
Wow.
There were some people that were thrown off by the live stream that me and Mindy did yesterday. Mindy from Temples of Jesus channel. Make sure to subscribe to her.
Hard pass.
The first minute, I was being sarcastic.
Oh.
Okay, it was just the first minute. If you watch the entire rest of the thing, or even just like more than just a minute, you would have realized that of course he's coming soon.
Really?
So I would give you this advice. If you're watching a YouTube channel, whether it's mine or it's some other channel, try and watch the whole thing.
Okay.
Because if you only watch a minute, you may miss a lot of what that YouTube video is about.
Jared, you're a little out of breath there, buddy. I don't want you to get yourself a little bit too worked up looking for those signs of Jesus. Maybe take a breather, literally. Now, that video of Jared walking around talking about how Jesus, his bosom friend, is definitely going to return has 10,000 views. It's incredible how many Mormons in particular, who are basically the only persons who watch his channel, hang on his every word to look for the signs of the times. Of course, it is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And these folks just can't wait for Jesus to come back and destroy the wicked with eternal judgment and fire. And this is one reason that Jared really covers the news in the Middle East, is because he can't wait until Israel is covered in blood, because that is a sign of the apocalypse. Jared rejoices every time that someone dies in the Middle East for their Iron Age informed nonsensical beliefs, because he thinks that that is going to be a sign of Mormon Jesus returning to split the Mount of Olives in two and to rapture him to meet Jesus in the air. What a sick mindset. Now, I've been watching Christian Homestead off and on for quite some time as a lurker, and it's incredible the amount of purchase that his views have in the Latter-day Saint community. For those of you who are not familiar with Mormonism at all, you may think that a channel that only has 40,000 subscribers is kind of small. On the contrary, this is one of the largest Mormon channels out there. And Jared is a major mover and thinker in this community. Oh, and by the way, I'm D-Days, the host of the Mormon News Roundup, and yes, that's talent on loan from Colab. Now, the reason that I asked you to watch this video here today is because I want to review, in particular, one of Jared's previous videos. It was a video that he just recently released. And here's that video that we're going to be taking a look at. The Mormon Church is in legal trouble over a seer stone. And here Christian is going to react to the Gaddy case, which took place in Denver in October of 2024, regarding a couple of members of the church who wanted to get their tithing back because they alleged that the Mormon Church hid vital information about various aspects of church history from them. Jared is going to give a reaction to that video, and I'm going to respond to him. And here's the channel trailer for his particular channel. He's some kind of a farmer who lives out in the Midwest.
So I don't know if you saw, but I think it was like 5 days ago, there was a article published in the Salt Lake Tribune where they're talking about these people that are suing the church or taking the church to court over tithing.
It's always amazing to me that Jared and others will refer to former members of the church as these people. He won't dignify them with the title that they're former members of the church, or even some of them are still members of the church. He others them right away by calling them these people. And this will be the first time that Jared doesn't do his homework and really figures out the entire situation, because for him, receiving further light and knowledge only comes through church-affiliated sources and not through the Salt Lake Tribune.
One thing that they're trying to argue is that the church tricked them, because when they joined the church, they never knew about Joseph Smith's seer stone, and how if they had known that, well, they never would have joined the church. They never would have paid tithing. And so the church needs to, I guess, like pay them back or whatever it is that they're trying to do.
Yeah, the basic argument of the Gaddy case is that the church withheld vital information from them, not only with Joseph Smith and the Seer Stone translation, because the church for over 100 years really gave the idea that Joseph Smith didn't use a Seer Stone and did not put his face in the hat, but instead that the modern Book of Mormon that we have was translated by the gift and power of God using the Urim and Thummim. All of the church artwork and all of the church publications did not acknowledge the Seer Stone until somewhat recently. So the lawsuit basically alleges that the church deliberately misled the members into joining the church and then giving tithing, and that the church should be held responsible for those misstatements and outright deliberate withholding of vital information.
It's so bizarre to me that anyone would try to make that argument. Like, I can't imagine that argument having any validity against any church about any doctrine of whatever religion.
For Jared, anyone who questions his beloved private club is absolutely bizarre. The idea that someone might feel chagrined or misled or duped into joining the Mormon church because they were not given the complete picture, for him, that's bizarre. For anyone else, that seems like a reasonable feeling that a person might have saying, I joined an organization and they told me that this was the foundations, this was the doctrine, this was the history. And we've come to find out that the church wasn't honest. And therefore, I'm going to take that to court. That seems pretty reasonable to me. Now, whether this particular lawsuit actually has a lot of legs to stand on, I can't say. For Jared, he thinks it's bizarre that if somebody feels misled or literally lied to, that they might want to hold that institution to account. For me, that's not bizarre. For me, that's common sense.
Like, it's really silly. I was thinking about it, and it's like a lot of times I like to compare things to pop culture. And I was thinking, like, okay, what is this like?
Yeah, Jared is a bastion of pop culture. Sure, Jared.
This is like you becoming a Star Trek fan.
Uh
Like,
huh.
Star Trek is already well established, it's been around for a long time. Here you are in the year 2024. You never really cared for it much, but then you like become interested in it. And so now you're a Star Trek fan and you start watching the series. Maybe you start with like the original series and then you progress to the next generation and you're like, okay, yeah, this is cool. There's the humans, but then you have Romulans and you have Klingons. That's awesome. And then there's Vulcans, and then, oh, there's Borg. Oh, there's Q. Like, there's this race of aliens that are like godlike and they're called the Q. And then, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Ferengis? Really? There's Ferengis? Like, their ears are disgusting and I hate their culture. And you know what? All the merchandise that I've ever bought, shirts or movie tickets or streaming service, like, I've been tricked because I did not know that there was going to be Ferengi, and Star Trek should have been upfront that there was going to be Ferengi. Like, I can't believe it. So if I knew that there were going to be Ferengi, I would never have purchased any of this merchandise. I would not be wearing this clothes. I wouldn't have these posters. So I want all my money back.
This analogy is absolutely barking mad absurd. Whether there's Ferengi in the Star Trek universe has no impact on a person whatsoever. That's of something of absolutely mundane importance. Whether the church's truth claims actually hold up is of vital interest to people who join the church. This is an absolutely ridiculous analogy. It falls flat on every single turn. I do enjoy the fact that Jared compares believing in the church kind of like believing in Star Trek. I think that they're both about the same level of plausibility. So I do enjoy that perspective. But as far as somebody who becomes a Star Trek fan, take the old Star Trek, for instance, Jared. You have all of the episodes of the old Star Trek, you're right, which was in the late 1960s, and you can make an informed decision about whether you want to really enjoy the show. Nothing was deliberately withheld from you. That's not the case for the people who join the church with incomplete information. We're not talking about new information. Ferengis is something new that was added in the next generation. Nobody's arguing that the church couldn't add new doctrines. What we're arguing, Jared, is that the church had to be honest about its own history and own doctrines, not deliberately conceal very important information for people who are making important life decisions. Your analogy sucks.
that is so that is so Ridiculous.
It's just so funny, Jared, when the church deceives its own members and potential converts into joining the church deliberately through withholding of information or deliberately misrepresenting its own history. That's hilarious, isn't it?
The article was saying, like, oh, well, this is a really key concept in the church. And no, it's not. No, it's not.
Jared, let me educate you. The coming forth of the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith said, was the keystone of the religion. And many other general authorities have said that either Mormonism stands or falls on the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. How it came forth is vital to the church's truth claims. Far from being a tangent, this is a core part of the coming forth of Mormonism.
We are a church that believes that there were gold plates that have been preserved through time, that there was a colony of Israelites that came from Jerusalem just before it was destroyed by the Babylonians, and that there was this entire civilization here recording all this on gold plates.
And you believe all of that without the slightest shred of evidence, since no gold plates have ever been found to be anywhere similar to what Joseph Smith claimed to have found.
On top of that, we believe that there was a civilization before them that weren't even Israelites, the Jaredites, and they had their plates. And then on top of that, we believe that Joseph Smith saw God the Father and Jesus Christ, and he handled the sword of Laban and the Urim and Thummim.
Can you stack up even more implausible beliefs or just barking mad nonsense that Latter-day Saints currently believe, Jared?
Just all the unique things that we believe. Like all these things that, unless you have a testimony,
Unless you believe in absolute nonsense for no good reason, you mean?
you just think it's crazy.
Yeah, Jared, reasonable people withhold judgment on such claims until such time as you have evidence for them. You provided zero evidence in any of the videos of the truthfulness claims of the church.
And so you take like one random Joseph Smith Seer stones, and that's like just too crazy for you on top of all the other things.
No, Jared, it's really a pattern of not just the seer stone being withheld. It's the backdating of the Aaronic priesthood restoration, the backdating of the Melchizedek priesthood restoration being a retrofit. It's the changing of the name of Mormon and Moroni. It's the retrofitting of the narrative, the Kirtland Temple narrative. It's all of the church's withholding of the first vision, all the different versions of the first vision. This is a systemic problem, not just one issue. The church deliberately withheld all of this very important information for converts. It lied to the members, Jared.
There was one obscure thing that I found one time by Lorenzo Snow. I did a video about this, but he said that during the millennium, the atmosphere is no longer going to be like it is right now. It's all going to be spirit. There's not going to be like an oxygen, nitrogen, and all the other gases atmosphere. It's all going to be spirit.
This is who you're taking your marching orders from, is Lorenzo Snow, saying that we're not going to breathe oxygen and nitrogen? That's ridiculous, Jared. Use your common sense, man.
We have a lot of very unique beliefs in our church.
You mean barking mad nonsense?
My understanding is that there's like some kind of debate over whether Joseph Smith used the Urim and Thummim or the Seer stone, or he used both. And I don't understand like these debates. I don't get into these kind of things. Not that I have anything against anybody that does.
Jared doesn't even care about the origin stories of his own church. The most vital, fundamental document in the church is the Book of Mormon, and he doesn't care a fig how it came about. That's embarrassing, Jared. Let me educate you, my friend. Let me send you the further light and knowledge that the Father promised to send to you, but never did. The modern Book of Mormon that we have was evidently only translated using the Seer stone and not the Urim and Thummim. That's the best available information that we have from Richard Bushman and many others. The fact that you don't know the fundamentals of your own religion is embarrassing. Do better, Jared. And why in the world doesn't Jared care about his own faith, about these very important matters? For him, it's all based on warm bosom feelings. He has a quote unquote testimony. So actually critically examining the narratives that the church has given to us and withheld from us and actually trying to get to the kernel of truth, that's not important for him because Jared is not a truth seeker. He doesn't care a fig about the truth. He only cares about confirming his presuppositional nonsense.
I'm just not interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's not interested in the truth. The truth is kind of inconvenient for him.
I'm not really interested in Book of Mormon geography.
Right. He doesn't want to tether his beliefs to reality whatsoever. He doesn't want to have to try to piece his metaphysical claims into reality. And it's really an explicit admission that he can't do so. There is no tethering of his supernatural beliefs with the reality. So he's not even going to try.
In all these like little niche topics that people debate over.
Niche topics. The coming forth of the Book of Mormon is the keystone of the religion. What are you talking about, Jared?
It really, really is not a fundamental belief.
Yeah, figuring out if the Book of Mormon is actually historical, gosh, that's not too important, is it, Jared? Give me a fetch and break.
Whether he used the Urim Thummim or whether he used a stone. It's so ridiculous. It just feels like very contrived. It feels like the narcissist way of thinking. They always like resort to what they think are like these little legal arguments or loopholes or technicalities. It's basically like the Pharisee mindset, looking for fault where there is none, trying to find some technical way to get what you want. And it's just absolutely ridiculous.
For Jared, the church can tell you anything that it wants. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter to Jared whether the church is honest. This is how a lot of members really approach these things. The church can lie. The church can withhold things. The church can deceive the members for generations. And for him, that's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous that his church leaders have engaged in shamefully deceitful behavior. It's shameful that someone would want them to be held to account. And for him, the narcissists are the people who are trying to hold the church's feet to the fire, not the people who have lied for generations. For Jared, people who want the church to tell the truth, well, that's just people looking for loopholes. They're looking for technicalities. No, they're looking for honesty and transparency, Jared. And the Pharisees are not the members of the church like myself who were misled for generations. The Pharisees are the ones who, through correlated curriculums, deceived the world and the members about the church's history. Get a clue.
It's just part of these attacks against the church.
That's right, Jared. More and more people are criticizing the church because it's become more and more apparent of the church's duplicitous actions. It's not narcissists and Pharisees. It's humble followers of Jesus who have now woken up to the church's clandestine celestial slush fund, which we're going to get to in a minute, and also the church's penchant for misrepresenting church doctrine, church theology, church history, and church truth claims.
Sister Nelson, I think this is some of what she was talking about in October 2022. It was after that general conference. It was a special area devotional for Alberta and British Columbia where she said that they knew that that conference was going to be a singular event because of the number of attacks in the lead up to that.
This is the persecution complex that runs deep into the heart of Jared. If someone criticizes the church, that just reinforces his belief. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the church does well, then that's proof that the church is true. If the church is under criticism for illegal and duplicitous actions, well, that's the persecution complex, and that's just Satan attacking the one true church. The house always wins in Jared's mind.
If I remember right, I think included in that was this like whistleblower guy.
A whistleblower guy. He always others the people who have critiques against the church. He won't name Gaddy and he won't name James Huntsman. He calls them these people or guys. He won't dignify them with a name. Either Jared really likes the other people or he's just incredibly ignorant or probably just a combination of the two. Jared is obviously referencing here James Huntsman and his lawsuit to get his money back from the church. So there was two different lawsuits from this week. The Gaddy lawsuit, which sued the church because the church's blatant misrepresentations of its history and doctrines. And also James Huntsman has sued the church because he paid tithing to the church, and the church said that they would not be using that for the building of the City Creek Mall, but they did. So Jared, let me educate you a little bit. The whistleblower guy was David Nielsen, who worked at Ensign Peak, who showed that the church did not engage in charitable activities for an entire generation, instead hoarded hundreds of billions of dollars. That's the whistleblower. James Huntsman Huntsman is the one who is suing the church because of the church's practices of building the City Creek Mall and not using his tithing donation for anything of substance. Jared, just keep watching this channel and I will bring you up to speed on your own religion.
That was like, oh my gosh, would you pay tithing if you knew that the church was saving money for the second coming? Ugh. Like in a church called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, can you believe that they're saving money for the second coming?
Notice his mocking of James Huntsman. So first of all, he conflates the two whistleblowers. He doesn't know his facts that we're talking about two different people here, David Nielsen and James Huntsman. It just all conflated into his confused and deluded mind. But he's going to mock people who said that it's immoral to fraudulently and shamefully hoard hundreds of billions of dollars to give to Jesus for the second coming. That's laughable to him. The morality of Jared is so skewed and so perverse. This is what the church does to people. It takes a good person and it poisons their morality. And it gives them their morality here that you're supposed to fraudulently solicit donations, like James Huntsman is alleging here. And also, you're supposed to cover up the Ensign Peak scam for generations. Also, that you can do what with it? Help other people? No, 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 no. Give to Jesus as a celestial slush fund upon his return to this earth in power and great glory. Notice how the church has hijacked any decent sense of morality. And Jared, because he drinks the Kool-Aid, he takes his marching orders from church headquarters. He does not use critical thinking to say, you know what? That's abhorrent. That's immoral. That's wrong. There's suffering that's taking place right now. Instead, he mocks people who gave money to the church under the auspice that would be used to help others, but it actually wasn't. It was used to grow a clandestine illegal hedge fund and build a luxury mall. For Jared, he thinks that those people are laughable. On the contrary, it's laughable to think that Jesus is going to return. We have no evidence that Jesus is still alive. We have no evidence that he's going to return. And number two, it's laughable to think that any anthropomorphic magic immortal who would return to this earth in power and great glory would need any money whatsoever. Jesus is the creator of the universe in Jared's mind, yet he needs hundreds of billions of dollars in a celestial sludge fund when he returns. Are you serious?
Oh my gosh. You guys, there are people in the church that do not actually believe the church, because if you did, you would understand that the whole point of this church is to prepare for the second coming. That's why it's called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's meant to prepare the world for the second coming. So yeah, having tithing being stashed away for the second coming, that kind of goes along with the mission of the church. And
Yeah, for Jared, fraudulently and shamefully hoarding hundreds of billions of dollars, that goes along with the mission of the church because Jesus needs that money when he comes again. That's a bankrupt mentality, Jared.
you must not believe in it. Otherwise, why are you having a problem with it?
Jared, people have a problem that Mormon leaders for generations fraudulently and shamefully hoarded hundreds of billions of dollars for no good reason, and that they did not use any of that money to alleviate human suffering at all. Anyone with a even slightly good level of morality, anyone who cares about their fellow man knows that that's abhorrent. But this is the kicker here. Jared does not care about his fellow man. Jared is not his brother's keeper. The only people that Jared cares about are the people in his celestial little club, the couple 100,000 tithe payers of the church. Everybody else can literally go to hell.
It's about sacrifice. I've said this before, the last time that we talked about this. If the church was loading pallets of cash onto rockets and shooting them up into space, and they said that these were like headed toward Kolob, I would not have a problem with it. Even if they weren't going to Kolob. If they were like the rockets were being shot into the sun, I would not have a problem with that, because it's not about what it's being used for.
And this goes to the last point that I made. Jared is not his brother's keeper. If there are people that are suffering now, they don't matter. While you were watching this video, about 1,000 people starved to death on this planet in horrible suffering. Jared doesn't care about any of those people. The money that is sitting there rotting in Ensign Peak that is being used to enrich Apple, Microsoft, and literally going into huge billionaires' pockets like Elon Musk because the church owns so much money in Tesla. That doesn't matter to Jared that people don't have access to clean water, that people don't have good education, that people are living in abject poverty. None of that matters to Jared because Jared is not his brother's keeper. Jared has been washed clean from the blood and sins of this generation. So what happens to those other people? Well, he doesn't care. Instead, he wants to give it to his invisible best friend when he returns to do God knows what with it. Jared, if you're ever watching this video, please let me know what Jesus is going to do with the approximately $300 billion the church has fraudulently and shamefully hoarded. Let me know what you think that he plans to use that for. I'm really interested. Drop me an email to kolob@mormonnewsroundup.org, Jared. Like and subscribe.
Like, this isn't a government and it's like, oh, where's my tax dollars going? Like, how are my tax dollars being used? This is a sacrifice that you're making to God. I would be happy if it wasn't illegal, just to burn the money, like take some cash and then burn it on an altar. That's what I would do.
Jared, we have no evidence whatsoever that any donation to the church is a sacrifice that you're making to God. What we have evidence for is that you're giving your money to your bishop, to your stake president, and then the vast majority of that, over 90%, goes to church headquarters, and that most of it just sits in a celestial sludge fund. There's no supernatural agent on the other side of that. You think you're making a sacrifice to God until you provide evidence that you are providing a sacrifice to God, that God is willingly accepting that money. All you're doing is sending it to fraudulent, greedy hoarders who hang out in cushy offices in North Temple in Salt Lake City, Utah.
It's supposed to be for you to help you overcome this world and not be so attached to this world and put God before worldly things, before your own desires.
If there was a God who actually asked me to provide him with some money, I suppose that I could do that, but I have never seen any God do anything, much less ask me to pay any organization as a proxy for him.
That's mostly what tithing is about. The funds are used to build up the kingdom of God. It's meant for charity and humanitarian work.
I love how he says that the funds are meant for charity and not that they're actually used for charity. At least you're being honest here, Jared, because the church is not externally audited. We can have no confidence that any of your money is being used for humanitarian purposes whatsoever. We have the church alleging massive humanitarian donations, the vast majority of which cannot be confirmed.
We do have some literal beliefs in this church that there actually is going to be a second coming of Jesus Christ, and that there's certain expenses that go along with that.
There's certain expenses that go along with Jesus' second coming. How much is it going to cost for Jesus to return? And Jared, how much is enough? Is 300 billion enough? Is a trillion enough? Is 2 trillion enough? What's the actual number that Jesus needs when he returns? What's the dollar figure so that when we get there, we can stop hoarding it and instead use it to help other people? Just let me know what the number is. Drop it in the comments, Jared. I'd appreciate that.
And I think part of those expenses, we've already seen it in the purchase of the Kirtland Temple. I believe that the Kirtland Temple was meant to come back before the second coming. I don't have anything to back that up.
You don't have anything to back anything up, Jared. Not just another one of your barking mad claims. You have nothing to back up your entire world view. Not one shred of evidence to confirm all of your second coming waste of time nonsense.
That's just my belief.
Everything is just your belief. You take it all on faith, Jared. Faith is not a reliable pathway to truth. One can take any position whatsoever on faith and belief. We need evidence to confirm our beliefs, Jared, not just believe impossible absurdities for no reason.
Satan is attacking the church.
The persecution complex of Jared is just so present to the top. Anyone with a reasonable or rational objection to the church's illegal actions, to the church's duplicitous hiding of its history, that's just Satan attacking the church. He won't actually tackle these issues head on.
I think there's kind of like two things going on. So like you have the Jews, right? You have the two gatherings. You have the Jews that are physically gathering to the land of Israel. There's my van, by the way, used. We bought it with cash.
What is it with Mormons who have to flex about their wealth? He bought it with cash just to let you know that he's pretty well off.
So you have like the physical gathering of the Jews and a lot of like physical temporal things going on with them, right? And then you have the spiritual gathering and somewhat physical gathering of Israel to the stakes of Zion.
Jared, get a clue. The Mormon shrivel is real. There's no spiritual gathering of anyone to anywhere. What we're seeing is people leaving the Mormon church in a mass exodus. They're getting up out of the pews. They're going through the cultural hall. They're exiting the foyer. They're getting into their cars and they're never returning. And it's for issues just like what we've been talking about here today. Because of the Gaddy lawsuit, people are coming to realize how the church has withheld vital information from them and they felt betrayed. And also from the James Huntsman lawsuit, where the church was supposed to have been a paradigm or a paragon of truth and Christianity on this planet. And instead, all it's been doing is enriching itself. There's no gathering that's happening. We're seeing the Mormon exodus right in front of our eyes, Jared. wake up.
I think what's going on is like you have this like growing hostility politically toward the Jews in Israel, especially. And then with the church, you have another kind of like siege that's going on. Like we know that this is all going to culminate in the siege on Jerusalem, right? That's when Christ is going to come and save the Jews. But I think there's also a siege on us, the other part of Israel. uh, these attacks on the church, attacking us in any possible way, whether it's on the individual level, Satan trying to get you to not go to church.
Yes, blaming things on invisible demons. Jared, do you have any evidence whatsoever that there is a satanic invisible demon that's haunting all of us, by the way? Can you just drop me a comment of your evidence for that? Or is this just another one of your absolutely ridiculous beliefs that you take with no evidence whatsoever?
Not pay tithing, feel ashamed about what you're doing, trying to shame you, to try and get you to not speak up and speak out and share your testimony. But then also on the larger scale with the church as an organization, you have like these larger attacks. There have been cyber attacks, you have these legal attacks, there's political attacks, there's cultural attacks. When you have these different groups that throw the church under the bus, that write plays and entertainment like the Book of Mormon play that slanders the church. Although we know that these attacks, like they can try and do their best, but it ends up their attempts get turned on their own head.
Are you for reals, Jared? I'm starting to think that maybe he's just a troll. The Book of Mormon musical slanders the church. You understand what satire is, my friend, don't you? Oh my goodness. The persecution complex, all of these so-called attacks by an invisible demon named Satan are further evidence for Jared's deluded mind that the church is true. It's not that there could be something wrong with the fact that the church was fined $5 million for fraudulently, shamefully hoarding $300 billion and for not doing anything of any consequence to help anyone at all. That's not the problem. The problem is that there's, what did he call them? Pharisees and narcissists and people who are influenced by Satan to attack his beloved private club. It's not that Gaddy and others have pointed out that the church has been disingenuous in its presentation of church doctrine, history, and theology. That's not the problem. The problem for Jared isn't the correlation department that sanitized church history to try to make it palatable so that people would join the church. That's not the problem. But that should be the problem, Jared. It's not the evildoers who are attacking the church. It's the church's own actions. The church brought all of these things upon its own head.
The Book of Mormon play, if anything, it seems like it's driven some people to the church.
The Book of Mormon musical, which, by the way, I've done a couple of reviews on it on this channel, which you should really check out, Jared. I think you'd appreciate that. Has generated about $600 million. It's one of the most popular musicals of all time. If you add up the total revenues of every single official church video that has ever been released, it doesn't come to a fraction of that amount. So more people have encountered Mormonism through the Book of Mormon musical than probably almost any other venue. And what has been the result of that? I don't have the statistics, but the vast percentage of people who watch the Book of Mormon musical in no way, shape, or form were interested in the church whatsoever after watching it. And this is really important, Jared. Why didn't they become interested in the church after watching it? This is one of the most popular musicals of all time. And more people got introduced to the Mormon church by the Book of Mormon musical than any other aspect of the church. Forget I'm a Mormon campaign. Forget the Homefront commercials. Forget the church's missionary efforts. Hundreds of millions of people have seen the Book of Mormon musical. And what happened to those people when they were done watching it? Virtually none of them contacted a Mormon missionary. Virtually none of them wandered into their local congregation or their chapel and said, I'm really interested in this. Virtually none of them had the Spirit touch their heart and they called church headquarters and said, I need to learn more. And why didn't that happen, Jared? Why didn't that happen? Since Mormonism, according to Jared, is the single most important thing on this planet that God wants everyone to join. And yet when they were introduced to it, none of them joined the church. Why is that, Jared? Why?
And in the case of Rabbi Gerfine, I don't talk to him anymore because he no longer is affiliated with Israel 365, but I used to talk to him on a monthly basis. And one of the first things that he said to me was that when he came to the United States, because he's from Israel, he went to, I think, Broadway and watched the Book of Mormon play. And he picked up one of the programs and he looked on the back, and our church had actually put like an advertisement on like the last page, like, and it said like, now that you've seen the play, come see the real thing, you know, get a copy of the Book of Mormon. And he was so impressed that the church wasn't like vitriolic or angry about it or like, oh, this play is of the devil or anything like that.
I know critical thinking isn't your thing here, Jared, but let's try it just for once. Do you think that if the church had taken out an advertisement in the Book of Mormon musical's playbill back in 2013, 2014 timeframe that said that this musical was a joke, that it was harmful, that it was evil, that it was slanderous of the church, do you think that they would have printed that? The church had to roll with the punches.
It's just like, yeah, well, now that you've seen that, come see the real thing.
Virtually no one did, Jared.
It's not that Rabbi Gerfine converted to the church.
Just like everybody else who watched the musical, Jared, nobody converted to the church.
Was really impressed by that, and he told me that. And I think there are some people that maybe never gave the church a thought, and when they come across these things, they're like, huh, maybe there's something to this church.
Maybe. Maybe. Jared likes to live in fantasy land where he imagines that people join the church after watching the Book of Mormon musical when virtually none of them did.
Whenever you have attacks like this, it can be discouraging, but just know that the enemy is digging a pit for themselves.
See, Jared has zero empathy for people like James Huntsman, Gaddy, or people like myself. They are literally enemies. They are narcissists. They are Pharisees. They are evil doers. I've been on Jared's side of the equation, but he's never been on my side. He can't possibly empathize with people who think that it is immoral that the church tells them one thing and then does something else. Because for him, the church can do no wrong. If there's one overwhelming takeaway that you can get from Christian Homestead's channel, it's a complete lack of empathy for anyone who's not part of his tribe.
They think that they're being like really smart, that they have like a really good plan, but it all gets turned on its head.
It all gets turned on its head, kind of like when the church was fined $5 million for fraudulently and shamefully hoarding hundreds of billions of dollars. Was that their plan getting turned on its head? Is the Mormon Exodus their plans being turned on their head? Is the church's constant waning of global influence their plans getting turned on their head?
But anyway, this is just like one of the latest examples of like something that I think is really silly. It's like such a silly argument.
Yeah, for Jared, it's really silly to ask the church to be honest in its dealings with its fellow man. Boy, isn't that so silly, Jared?
So what our missionaries are supposed to do
They're supposed to tell the truth.
when somebody joins the church, we have to tell them everything, every little controversy, every little esoteric thing about the church before we can allow somebody to join the church.
This is an absolute straw man that is an absolute joke. No one's asking to be told every little thing that the church does. That's a straw man. What they're asking for the church to do, Jared, listen to me, Jared. What they're asking the church to do is to be honest. Can you understand that?
It's just silly. Like if you were really that concerned about joining the church, if you were really making that decision and taking it very seriously, and you were that concerned about it, you would probably research the church yourself before even talking to the missionaries.
If you were lied to about the church's history, like I was, when I went out and served a full-time mission in the 1990s, I had no idea that I was teaching a totally sanitized and inaccurate version of church history and church theology. But for Jared, whose fault was that? That's my fault. I should have done my research. I should have taken things more seriously. I was a lazy learner and a lax disciple. For Jared, the church can never do anything wrong whatsoever. He can't acknowledge that the church has any faults because it's supposedly Jesus's only true church. He looks at the world through rose-colored glasses.
The church has been around for a long time, since 1830. That's when it was established. Just like Star Trek, if you're going to become a fan of Star Trek, just know that this has already been going on for a long time and no one's forcing you to do anything. And so if there's something in Star Trek that you don't like, well, it's already been out there for a while. Maybe you should have done some more research.
Yep, it's all your fault. The Gaddies, who were misled by the church about the Rock in the Hat, about the priesthood restoration, about the retrofitting of the Kirtland Temple narrative, about all of the other things that we were misled about the Rock in the Hat, about the Seer stones, all of the information that the church withheld from us deliberately. That's your fault, dear viewer. You should have been smarter. It's not that the church controlled the information and did not provide it to anyone in a reasonable manner. It's a failing upon you. And of course, most of the people that we're talking about here were given church information before the internet age, where there was virtually no ability to be able to research things because it was locked down in church archives at church history. The church didn't allow people to look at this information, and it was only forced to do so in the internet age by releasing the Gospel Topics essays. It's all your fault for not doing your homework. And the irony of this entire thing is that Jared hasn't done his homework himself. He doesn't know the difference between the rock and the hat and the Urim and Thummim and how they were used in the translation process. Jared doesn't do his homework, but he blames other people who did. What a hypocrite.
But it's also just kind of a silly thing. It's like, oh, so he used a brown stone instead of two clear stones. Oh my gosh, I'm done. I'm out. And I don't know why people get so bent out of shape about the hat, because I do believe that he used both the Urim Thummim and the Seer stone.
Jared, you don't know your church history, just like you don't know anything else. Everything that you do is based on faith, and you haven't bothered to do your homework. You haven't bothered to tie your beliefs into reality. You are really just an ignorant, deluded sycophant. But for those of us who actually cared about the truth, those of us who were not lazy learners like you, we did our homework and found out that there were significant contradictions between what the church told us and the actual reality. Some people think that there should be some accountability for that. And I think that's pretty reasonable.
I don't see any problem with that. Who cares?
This betrays Jared's entire belief here. He doesn't care about the truth. All he cares about is reconfirming his already decided upon beliefs. People who actually want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible have a problem with being lied to.
So he used the Seer stone, put it in a hat to block out the light. Oh my gosh, that is so strange.
It's not necessarily about the strangeness of the beliefs. It's about all of the artwork that was shown to members for generations that was telling one story when the actual reality was something different. And the church did this deliberately. Why? It's because the rock and the hat is even more ridiculous than the regular story that we were all told about the Urim and Thummim or about Joseph Smith's translational process. The church knew that if they put artwork or they told the members about the seer stones and the rock and the hat, that it would lose converts, that some people's faith would be shaken. Therefore, they advanced a dominant narrative that was not true in order to solicit additional donations and to keep members in the pews. That's dishonest, that's immoral, that's reprehensible.
Like, I never do that. Right now, my phone, I'm facing the sun. I have to block the sun with my hand to see what's on the screen as I'm recording this. Like, oh my gosh, is that, you guys, is that really occultic? Are you still going to watch my channel because I had to block out the sun to see this?
I'm not going to listen to the rest of Jared's deluded ramblings here, but we have yet another example of how the rock and the hat is just like a cell phone. Jared, the rock and the hat is nothing like a cell phone whatsoever. We understand how cell phones work. We don't understand whatsoever how rocks in the hat work. And maybe this wasn't my best review, but I really feel like I needed to give Christian Homestead a thorough discussion. And let me know in the comments below what you think about Christian Homestead's channel. He basically looks for the signs of the times, and he tries to reinterpret the writings of primitive Bedouin scribblings in the Old Testament that we don't really have great evidence that they themselves actually wrote, and we have zero evidence that there's a divine connection. But he strains and comes out with all of these old passages out of the Bible and tries to shoehorn them into 2024. And as we saw earlier, he goes through the writings of old prophets and all of their supposed predictions about Jesus, and then he tries to reinterpret those for the modern day. There's a yearning in the Christian Homestead followers' hearts for the return of Jesus, but there's just no good reason to believe that Jesus is still alive, and there's no reason to believe that he's coming back. There's been hundreds of millions or even billions of people who have looked forward for the day of Jesus's return, and every single last one of them has been disappointed. I see no reason to believe that Jared won't live the rest of his life being disappointed as well. Now, there's one last aspect of Jared's channel that I want to discuss with you before I let you go. Thanks so much for staying with me for this entire episode. Hit the like, hit the notification, and hit the subscriptions while you're at it. But this is one of the most fascinating aspects of Jared's entire channel. Jared has a set of Google documents where he has old Mormon prophecies or scriptures that he cross-references, but he also has a very interesting document which chronicles Christian Homestead's followers' efforts to get people to join the church. And here's the end of that video that we just saw there. Church in legal trouble over the seer stone and saving money for the second coming. We get to see the article that he was referencing and also the church's official websites, some things that you can do to support charities and some other items. And then you get to this section here, which is my spreadsheets. And this is really interesting stuff here. Let's check it out. He has a tab here, which is called hashtag flood the earth, which is an ode to President Benson, who wanted to flood the earth with the Book of Mormon. And here's all of his followers on the left here, alphabetized by name, and how many copies of the Book of Mormon that they've shared with other people. And let's just examine the totals. We can see the total participants in the Flood the Earth Book of Mormon Challenge are about 1,200, and that they've shared 10,000 copies of the Book of Mormon. You see that right here? And we can see how many people received a missionary discussion, which was 177. And we can see that there is a stunning level of low baptisms here. Only 50 baptisms out of 10,000. That is a stunningly low level of baptisms for the amount of effort that's involved. But this is the most important metric here, folks, because we already know that a lot of the church's converts, they fall away right away. In fact, probably 80% of church converts leave the church within a year. So really, the only important metric out of this entire endeavor is endowments, because you're not really a member of the church unless you're endowed in a holy temple. And out of 10,000 copies of the Book of Mormon that Christian Homestead and his followers have given out, only one person, got endowed. And I do wonder if that person is still active. And remember, these are being handed out by faithful members of the church to their friends. These are not just random Book of Mormons that are given by missionaries to people. They're by the best and the brightest that the church has. Notice the stunning level of futility. Notice the abject waste of time of Christian Homestead's tens of thousands of followers, of getting one person to actually really join the church in a substantial way. Imagine if all of the people who subscribe to the Christian Homestead channel, instead of wasting time handing out copies of the Book of Mormon, which are completely futile to the church's efforts, imagine instead of spending hundreds of hours straining for the signs of the time and yearning for Jesus's return, imagine if they use that time, effort, and focus to actually help other people on this planet and to invest in themselves rather than to send hundreds of millions and hundreds of billions of dollars to church headquarters for a celestial clandestine illegal fund. And this is what religion does to good people. It takes a good person like Jared and it warps his morality and it changes him so that all he cares about is himself. It strips his empathy for other people straight from him, because anyone who criticizes him or his beloved religion is an emissary of Satan and is a narcissist and is a Pharisee. It sets up an us versus them mentality. It's a wheat versus tares, sheep and goats. If you're not with me, Jesus said, you're against me. Therefore, you're my enemy. Christian Homestead doesn't look at people who criticize the church or even non-members as his brothers and sisters. He's not his brother's keeper. He said that it doesn't matter if the church were to burn the money or even send it on rocket ships into the sun. He has an innate disdain for his fellow man, unless that fellow man knows the signs and tokens necessary to walk back to the angels who stand as sentinels and gain his or her exaltation in spite of earth and hell. Then he cares. Anyone else, he is yearning for the day when Jesus will come, and all of those people who haven't paid into the Ensign Peak scam, they're the ones who will be burned by apocalyptic fire. That's the litmus test. It's not whether you are a good person. It's not whether you helped other people. It's whether you paid into the Ensign Peak scam. That is the litmus test for whether you will survive the second coming of Jesus. And of course, this is so important. What evidence does Jared provide for any of his claims, any of his beliefs? He provides zero, and he admits in his own channel repeatedly that he does not care if his beliefs are true. All he cares about is his supposed testimony that has been confirmed to his heart by a burning in the bosom. And he comports the rest of his life based on the marching orders of what the 15 shriveled up white guys at North Temple tell him to do. And if those people at church headquarters lie to the members about history, theology, or anything else, that's their prerogative. That's just fine, because you're never supposed to speak evil of the Lord's anointed. And I'm going to email this video to Jared, and hopefully he watches it. So my final message to you, Jared, is I will dismiss you without further argument.
Brainwashed. him go. Time to move on.